Franchise Secrets, Eric Von Horn.
If you're not a part of the Franchise Secrets Facebook group, what are you waiting for? It's franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. I cannot believe how valuable this group turned out to be. When someone asks a question, the feedback is honest, authentic, very helpful, and it's from multiple perspectives. If you're not sure that you're getting the most accurate information about franchising, then check out the largest, most helpful Facebook group in all of franchising. Whether you're a Z, a Zor, a buyer, or investor, join our free Facebook group at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. This is Eric Van Horn, and today I have Ciaran on, Ciaran Olsen, who is a franchisee with Shack Shine, and I think this is going to be one of the most fascinating podcasts that I've done in a long time. So he grew up in Vancouver, Canada, spent 7 years as a social worker working with male youth. He still spends a lot of his time volunteering doing this type of thing, but he loves to travel. He has a new family with a baby girl and is a current owner of Shack Shine in Vancouver, or with O2E Brands in Vancouver. Ciaran, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me, Eric. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. One of the things I didn't mention in your bio, because I just want to talk about it, but you've been to over 50 countries and you haven't been living in Vancouver since June. So, and you're running Shack Shine this whole time. So let's get to that in a little bit. That's, super interesting, but how did you get started in franchising? Give us, the audience, a little bit of your background.
Sounds good. Well, yeah, I grew up in Vancouver, and then after high school, went out to university, and I started in business, and I was sitting in the library first year, and I'm reading an accounting book. I'm 18 years old, and I'm the first time I had freedom in my life, the first thing I choose to do is go read about numbers and money. And I'm just maybe I'll come back to this at some point, but that's not just to honor myself as a youth. That's not the first thing I should choose to do when I first time have freedom. I was playing intramural soccer, and there was this goalie on our team who was quite a character. And he told me that he had this practicum where he was going to this remote town in northern BC to work with Indigenous youth at this summer camp. I'm that sounds awesome. I was going to pick up garbage for this city. How did you get that? And he's I'm in this social work program. What's a social worker? A party planner? And he's no, you basically came down to it. You get paid to help people. That sounds way better than me reading accounting and picking up garbage. So I ended up changing programs, and I graduated with a degree in social work. And I got this practicum where I was working in the wilderness with teenage youth who were instead of going to prison, they would come to this wilderness program, and we do runs every morning, cut wood, do school at this awesome wood cabin out by the lake. I ended up working for them. I went up to the Arctic for a bit as a social worker, and I did these youth programs for a couple of years, out where the polar bears are and stuff. I did see polar bears live. It was really cool. And then I eventually, I was programmed to want to go get a secure job with a pension. So I ended up going back to my home province of British Columbia, where I got a job as a child safety worker, and started looking at my paychecks, and I probably 70% of my job was doing paperwork and maybe 30% interacting with people, being in an office. Wasn't making a lot, wasn't really enjoying the job. And I don't know if you guys know much about the city of Vancouver. I think right now it's the most expensive place to buy real estate in North America. So I was well, I need to make more money than this if I want to live in Vancouver, where I'm from. So I was I had some friends doing, it's called College Pro Painters. Yep. And it's basically student house painting, and you learn entrepreneurship. So I was going to sign up for that, but it was the middle of summer, so I couldn't do it till next year. And then my friend, he told me, a good friend of mine had just started this franchise called Shack Shine, and he was the first franchisee. And he said I could come knock on doors for him, and it'd be a good experience for me before I get into College Pro. So I went and did that. I started knocking.
He scammed you. You get some good help for a low price.
But I literally moved my entire life to go back to do this. So once I started knocking on doors and realized how hard it was, I had to figure it out. So I ended up getting really good at it. And then by the time I did get to college pro painters, I was actually quite good at knocking on doors. So it took off, did that for a couple of years. And then I actually went back to Northern BC and tried the social work thing again. Wasn't just after I'd been an entrepreneur for a little bit there, I just wasn't doing it. And then my friend who had convinced me to come do Shack Shine actually wanted to get out of Shack Shine. So I ended up buying the company from him. And that was 2.5 years ago. And then fast forward to today.
Wow. So I want to dive into pieces of that story a little bit more.
Sure.
I'm interested in the social work stuff. And did you did that in different countries, right? How many different countries did you do that in, or is it mostly like Antarctica and Canada?
We're like, okay, our Arctic in Canada is like, it's this territory called Nunavut. It's like a territory. It's the largest province territory in the country. It's in the north. So I was up there. I did in my home province. I've done volunteer stuff. I've been to Zambia. That's in like South Central Africa 3 times to this organization. I've done in the Philippines. I'm in Mexico right now, and twice a week I go volunteer with youth, which is a lot of fun. So yeah, I've been to quite a couple others too, but those would probably be the highlights.
So the reason that I'm interested in this is because I grew up as a kid in South Dakota, but I had a more of a worldview. Like I understood how the world worked, even though I grew up in South Dakota. And probably one of the most memorable things that I've ever done in my entire life was I remember I was flying from Kentucky because I was doing some type of business thing in Kentucky in college, coming back home. And that's when there was a conflict in Kosovo, and NATO and the UN and all of that, were in Kosovo and Albania. And I thought, wow. And I got a phone call that says, "Hey, Eric, do you want to go to the border of Albania and Kosovo to go do like a humanitarian aid mission?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm in. And so anyway, it was a month later. My sister and I were on a flight to Albania, went through Italy, and then landed in Albania. Stayed the night in Tirana, and then got on a military helicopter, flew through half the country over to the border of Albania and Kosovo. And then I took a big old truck between the city that I was in to the border, which took about 45 to 60 minutes to get there. And there it was my first experience being on a border in an area that had conflict, meaning they had guns on the border patrol had guns, and they're like right over there, just like right over the bridge. They said, see those the flashing things? They're like, those are guns and what you see is the scope, the sun reflecting off of the scope. And that was the enemy, basically. So, that was an eye-opening experience for me. I could go on and on about that, but I'll leave it at this. One of the last things that we did there, I was on the border, and over the radios that we had like tied into the UN, the radios were saying, "Hey, take cover. They're bombing the wrong side of the border," meaning the border that I was on was about ready to get bombed, the wrong side. So we just tore out of there. I go down to the main area, and I got into the CNN tent, and they're like, "Hey, come in and look at what's going on." And the journalists were running and jumping, and there was like, it was insane. But when I hear people talk about doing things like that and humanitarian stuff and social stuff and things in other country and underprivileged things, like I love stuff like that. I don't think I've ever shared that on the podcast, and most people probably never knew that I've done stuff like that. So I wanted to just let you know where that was coming from. So I love that type of stuff. So
should have called me. I would have.
I know, man. So the question is, like, what was the wildest or the most impactful experience that you had doing some of your volunteer stuff? And then I want to jump into door knocking and Shack Shine.
Sure. Okay. Well, this is live, so I guess it's gonna be on the record. But so my last time in Zambia, I go to volunteer at this it's basically a school program for kids who can't afford to go to school because their parents don't have the money, or maybe they don't have parents. So there's this organization set up that they can come to this school for free. And over the years, as I was coming, more and more kids were coming, and the building was staying the same size. And the last time I came, it's been over a 10-year period. So I knew some of these kids that were now teenagers or even adults pretty well. And every time I like to go on an adventure, like a safari or something more like quite interesting. And so the last time I went, I was there by myself, and I was going to do this like bushwalking tour where you like walk through like the jungle and camp and stuff. And some of the teenagers are like, Ciaran, this is your third time here. You've never taken us with you. You've never even left this city, or maybe we've left the city, but not for very long. And I was just like, okay, well, it's a little bit costly of bringing like five of you guys, and everyone's going to want to go. And then they ended up convincing me to go on my Facebook and like make videos explaining like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to take these guys on like into the jungle that they've never been. They live in Zambia, but they've never been. So I ended up raising the money. A lot of people are like supporting it back home in Canada and other places in the world from people I've met. And the teachers are supporting it. And then the night before I go, the principal calls me and says, Ciaran, you can't take the kids, because if something happens, you could disappear and it's gonna come back to fall on us. And this is like the day I'd like made thank you videos from like the kids and the parents. Some of them were crying, saying thank you guys so much. And they're like, but you can give the money to us and we'll help pay for the teachers' salaries and stuff. So I thought about it over, and I said, okay. And I thought about it overnight. We left the next morning at 4 a.m. on the bus.
I was going to say you left.
With the kids. And we did the trip. And then one of them was like, two of them were adult, like 19. And then when they were like 9. And then so I didn't get on the final bus. It was an hour to the city. And then instead I went to cross the border in Malawi just so there would be no drama or anything after that. But that was a great experience for like a week with these boys that are from Zambia but had never spent time out camping in the jungle, seeing like hundreds of elephants in this really cool park and lions and that. We had signed permission from their parents, so it was all legal. So if anyone's watching this now, but it was a little bit of friction between the school. So that was probably the most wildest, craziest youth experience that I've had. That was also a lot of fun. And
Dude, I bet if we asked those 5 kids like the most memorable experience of their entire life, that would be it. Oh,
yeah,
man.
They still give me a shout on WhatsApp sometimes. So
oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you've traveled a ton. Vancouver's amazing. So let's talk about College Pro. Like, what was it like door knocking? Because Cameron at College Pro at that time. So he was at College Pro.
No,
okay.
He wasn't there at the time. I know Cameron through, he used to run with O2E, but he was already passed by the time I came.
He was past O2E even by the time you were getting into College Pro.
I don't know when he left O2E, but I'm assuming. But like
right around there. Okay.
Pro. Yeah.
We'll assume he wasn't around. Okay. But he was involved early in College Pro as well.
Yes.
But yeah, tell me about the door knocking experience.
Sure. Yeah. Once I started with College Pro paintings, because I'd done it with Shakshan already and didn't have that much success. I remember the first day I went out, they said to go put flyers on the doors like a day before and then come back to knock on the doors. So like, I didn't even have a car at the time. So like I took a bus from my parents' house in Burnaby at the time to the turf, and then biked, which was like an hour, 20 minutes one way. Went and hung up flyers. And then I forgot to look up the postal codes that I had like territory for. And then when I went home to like find out exactly where I was going to door knock, I realized the place that I flyered wasn't even the turf that I had. So that was the first experience. But then I went to knock on doors that night anyways. And I couldn't believe it. And this has not happened again. But out of the first 4 doors, 3 gave me an estimate time to go to a paint job. Imagine the first 4 doors I knocked in the business, 3 gave me an estimate. And one of them booked for like $4,000. So after the first month, I had booked, I think, $20,000 or $30,000 in Canadian dollars. So it's not quite the same as US. But I was freaking out, thinking I was really far behind. I think it was about $30,000 booked. And then I learned how to look at this thing called the RAG, which is like results at a glance, compare yourself with the other franchisees. And I was like number 1 in the whole entire system out of like 100 people for January. And I was like, I started getting really excited. So that was a great way to start. But the struggle came, I think, during like working for Shackshine, learning how to talk to customers, learning how to objection handle, how to ask the right questions, that and be observational and just be a human and conversate with them so that they open up to you and figure out their needs and if they need your service.
So when did so you worked for your buddy at, you did door knocking, and then take us through the journey from door knocking with college pros to Shackshine. Love to kind of hear how that all happened.
Okay, so I ended up doing college pro painters for 4 years, 4 seasons.
Okay.
And it was good. I hit some records within the company. I met a lot of people. I learned a lot about customer service, about sales, about business. And after I finished at college pro painters, I had an idea to move to Thailand and do an online business, and it was called Young Men's Mentoring. I do it like mainly as a volunteer thing now, but it's basically mentoring teenage boys over Zoom, one-on-one video calls with like setting goals for the year, for the quarter, for the month, for the week, and then referring that with their parents to like just make them as successful as possible in what they're doing. So I did that. I actually paid someone who was quite successful in a similar space to help me, but I realized he taught me like just to do everything myself. So I was learning to copyright, I was learning how to manage Google AdWords, I was learning how to build websites, and I just got burnt out because I don't like that stuff. I don't like all the back end stuff. So I ended up stopping. I ended up, like a couple of boys, clients I just told their moms, like, I'll do this for free indefinitely because I like doing it anyways, but I'm gonna go a different route. And I still have one of the boys that for like 3 years now I've been mentoring every week, and it's cool. So I want to go to Miami for 10X. I think I'm going to go visit him. He's up northern Florida.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, so that happened, and then I wanted to go back to Vancouver just to be around family and that. And the guy Brad, who had started the first Shackshine franchise, was like, he was just struggling with doing it and the motivation. He wanted to sell, so we ended up making a deal, and then I started in business and then knocking on doors for Shackshine. Now I own the company, and he left sooner than expected, and I realized how much different a pressure washing Christmas lighthouse detailing company was from a painting business, and how much there was to learn. And it was a grind. It was a real grind for a couple years, and it was hard.
Let's talk about the grind. Let's talk about how hard it was. Cause a lot of people, I mean, they look at you now, and you're a member of the mastermind, Franchise Tribe. And, you're like living in Mexico right now, living life. But a lot of people don't like to talk about the grind, and the grind, there usually is a grinding period. So go ahead and share a bit about that.
Yeah, sounds good. I remember this thought. I was at like an O2E conference every year. They have a conference generally in Vancouver. It's moving to the States now, but
so just real quick, O2E is the parent company of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Shackshine used to have a moving company, but that is like the umbrella company, O2E, with Brian Scudamore at the helm leadership of that.
Yeah, exactly. So I was at my first, it's called Kickoff. I was at the first conference, and I was in the hot tub at the hotel, and this French Canadian guy who owned a bunch of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. So I was just asking for any advice for getting new into the O2E brand. And he was saying, he's like, this business is good. I have a terrible French accent, so I'm going to try. But he's like, this business is good, and the profit margins aren't that much, but that's a good thing, because if the profit margins are a lot, people are going to come in and steal it. He's like, and the second thing I would suggest is make it as easy as possible for people to give you money. So then after that, I went and bought a bunch of like point of sale machines and that, and I was a little bit more okay with the lower profit margins than I was used to in the painting world.
That's some good advice, though, to make it as easy as possible for people to pay you. I was giving some franchisor some advice yesterday on a webinar, and they were trying to get more leads from brokers. He had a bunch of leads from territory checks from brokers, people that brokers that were interested in sending candidates or leads to this franchisor, and he hardly had any of them actually show up as leads. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he told me what he's doing. I'm like, you're making it harder for them to give you a lead. And this, and this is how you're making it harder. You need to make it easier. So that's just some we could have glossed over that, but that's just a really good basic principle and good advice that you got back then. And so you did something with that advice, right?
Yeah. In this case, it's what's called a Clover machine. It's like a point of sales purchase, and it allows, when I came into the company originally, the way they were collecting money on site is they would pull up the iPad and they would ask the customer for the credit card number while they're writing it down on the iPad. That was the only way they could collect money at the door. And you can imagine, do you want to give your credit card number to me right now? So this made it easier, and it also allowed them, if the techs can get a tip, which increased the tech's wage, which increased the longevity of someone staying on our team. So that was a huge win. And then I don't have to bother at the time me calling the customers personally asking to get paid, or just taking forever, especially with so many jobs. So anyways, going back to the beginning on it, it was really tough, because the painting world, from my experience, I think that's why a lot of university students and entrepreneurs are drawn to it, because it's big job sizes, it's outside. You can definitely make a ton of mistakes, which I did. But it's not so much liability, as long as you can just train people properly on ladders to be safe and wear a safety harness on the roof. And because it's seasonal, not that many long-term entrepreneurs are as interested as they are in other spaces. So that was my mindset going into this. And then when I got into Shack Shine, I remember I'd go to collect money from a customer. This is for $300. I'm used to paint jobs somewhere 12 grand. I'm gonna have to do I'm terrible at math, but say 70 of these just to do one paint job.
A lot more.
Yeah. So that was discouraging. And then having to still every time you have a customer, you still have to collect payment, get that customer, book them in. And over the years, Shack Shine with O2E is improving that to make it easier for the franchisee, to make it a more valuable business. But there's just so many more moving parts and so much learning, and knowing that I left the painting space to get into this. I was at the time I thought I'd made a mistake. And I would have sold, but I'd taken out a huge loan to get this, and there were no buyers. My P&L was going down, as I had taken a pre-existing business that was doing at the time $500,000 plus in revenue, and there was no backing out, so I had to figure it out. So I ended up hiring, because I really don't like squeegeeing windows personally. So I had to hire, and I'm no good at it. I'd probably cause a lawsuit if I tried to go clean my customers' windows. But just joking. But so I hired a production manager. It went good for the most part till it went south, because I wasn't used to how to make a proper contract, how to set expectations, how to lead someone properly. So
because up to this point, you've been, from my perception of things, you've been the person kind of working in the business up to this point. Your success has been around you. You're not the best window squeegeer. So you're I've got to do something different. And so this is kind of at the crux of you starting to work on your business versus in your business. Is that accurate?
Yeah. In College Pro, I did have managers, but I was still if they had a question, I would be there helping. So it was sort of a helper more, where this was actually they had to make decisions and I wasn't even involved, because there's just too many moving parts. I couldn't be. So I think I went through two managers before now. On our third manager a year in, it's going quite well, and there's still a ton of learning. You're not perfect by any means, and we're improving every day. That's why I'm part of you guys' mastermind. But that's where we're at. We're at a point.
Our mastermind now that you're in it.
Yeah. And so we're at a point now where I've got a sales manager, I've got a production manager, and I'm doing Outsource School, which he was in the mastermind presenting. And if you don't know what Outsource School is, it's basically learning how to manage a VA, a virtual assistant. So I'm going through that process now, so all the stuff that I'm working from my computer, that I can outsource as much of it as possible. So when I am in the territory where my business is, I'll just be more effective, because now I can't do anything in the physical because I'm not there. So I've had to learn how to delegate, how to lead more effectively, and then had time to work on stuff at the back end, from learning the right line items in the P&L to hiring the right accountant, hiring the right lawyer to go through your contracts, through your safety stuff, and getting connected with people like you, Eric, who can teach me more, who've been through a lot of this stuff already and are further ahead, so I can learn and get insight. So I'm not in the business, but I'm still working a ton just from the laptop and doing things at a different level, you could say. Not a better level, not a worse level. Every job, in my opinion, is important, but someone needs to do this if you want to grow that company. And I've been forced by the situation in a super positive way to do this.
Where is your business located?
Vancouver, Canada.
So you're in Vancouver, and that's where the corporate O2E is, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. And there's some good things and bad things about that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, and then you've been away since last June.
I went back for 2 weeks. To check in. Yeah.
So you checked in for 2 weeks. When I recently left to go to Mexico, not for nearly as long as you've been in Mexico, I was there for 2 weeks. Caleb and Stacy over here in the States, while I was there, they were getting a lot of emails, because my job was to wake up in the morning, spend an hour on emails thinking, I'm not going to do this. How do I show them how to do this? So and they were so great. They were like, give us more stuff, Eric. We're ready for this and we can handle it. And they did. So that's what I was doing there, is not sending emails and doing all this stuff, but I was delegating things to them that I've been doing for the last 2 years myself, just because it was easier for me to do every now and then. So I'm sure that helped you being in Mexico to delegate more. So what is it? What are some of the bigger things, or the most the things that have freed you up the most, whether mentally or from a time standpoint, that you've delegated that you used to do yourself?
I'm really I like to think I'm really good at sales. But I could say, yeah, the sales for sure. Even though if I had a sales manager, maybe there's a quote near my house or something, and he's like an hour and a half away. So he'll text me, hey, Ciaran, can you do this quote? And because I like doing it, I'll do it. And I don't mind doing that. Yep. But, that's an example of one thing, right? That could be, okay, I'll go and do it. I was talking to my friend, was asking the other day, the guy who I bought the business from, because now he's back in the painting business, and he asked, he's like, hey, how do you do this? And what's blocking other people from being able to leap for so long and run their business? And I said, okay, Brad, for example, if you have a quote for a house, the quote's going to be about 15 grand. You have to pay a sales guy. If he books it, you can even commission at $1,500. It'll take you 2 hours to drive over there, write up the quote, send it to them, and book it, and you'll make $1,500 yourself. So are you going to delegate that to someone for $1,500, or are you going to do it? And he's like, well, I'll probably go do it. I'm like, exactly. So in my case, I just don't have to, that's a decision that's already been made for me. So the question is, how do I work around this? And the question is, we've grown revenue 35% since I've been gone, and we weren't at 100,000, north of $1 million at this point. And I've had to just grow stuff as we bring in more people and delegate more things. You just have to everything rises. And I think in this case, and I'm sure there's going to be more problems coming up, not problems, challenges to overcome obstacles, but as we grow, there will be obstacles, and there'll be challenges to this situation as well. And I'll fly back when I need to. But I think it's super valuable in a business to have someone who can't be boots on the ground for a significant period of time to observe everything, give people that are boots on the ground feedback on a weekly basis, or even daily if needed, in a healthy way, to make things happen.
It makes sense. Like what you said about sales. One of the things that I learned in Mexico is for the franchise, or not the franchise mastermind, but the Tribe of Investor Mastermind, it's $20,000 a year to join that thing. So people want to have a phone call. They fill out an application. They want to have a phone call with me before they buy it. But I actually hired somebody while in Mexico. I spent an hour on the phone with them because they're selling another mastermind that I know about. And so they are now selling the mastermind for me, and I give them a good chunk of money to do it. But that was the same thing, man. It was easy for me to do it. I enjoyed doing it, but also it was robbing me of spending time doing other things, or even just thinking about things, or being able to provide value for my tribes in different ways. So that's something that
Exactly.
I'm outsourcing for the mastermind. So, what are some of did you give up anything and then have to take it back, or even for a period of time? Did you give up something and then you're like, I'm not ready to give that up yet?
I've recently taken back like posting job ads and screening applicants. But because we've increased our revenue goals and we're adding on another van here soon. So I'm a deal with one of my managers that I'll take this over temporarily and get you the right people to interview if you're willing to take on this more responsibility here. And I'm going to use that on Outsource School to teach a VA to screen those applicants for us and then set up the right interview for the right people. I'm sure that'll be a process, but it's that, like you said, it's being, to me, it's almost being selfish for me to go do a quote, because if I'm doing that quote, I'm robbing someone else from a job and being part of a really awesome company where you can feel like you're at home, part of a family, you're growing and getting ahead. If I'm doing a job in that business, I'm robbing someone else of a job and an opportunity.
Yep.
So I was a social worker. I like to volunteer. Like, I love helping people. That's what fills me up the most. So I feel like in this case of business, the best way I can help people is to increase revenue in the company, because it means we can provide more jobs and good pay and help more customers. And it's fun.
I like that. I think we look at things, it's so easy to be caught up in our business, and we're looking at things from our own perspective until we take a step back and we can see things from a different perspective. Even like, I'm robbing somebody of a promotion. I'm robbing somebody of making more money. I'm robbing them of this. And most of us don't think like that. Here's another thing that people are listening right now and they're like, must be nice, or, there's probably some lucky breaks that you had, or whatever they may be thinking of why you've had the success that you've had. But this is one of the things that I've noticed, and I haven't said this to you before. You joined the mastermind, and you, shortly after you joined, you're like, hey, I just checked out the Outsource School episode or training that you did. I'm ready to buy that. And that was one of the very first trainings that I did in the mastermind, like 2.5 years ago. Caleb wasn't even around back then. Caleb was a little baby back then. So he's right here and I'm teasing him, but that was one of the first things. And then you took action on that right away. I'm like, man, this guy just got in. He's listened to the recordings of things that everybody has access to, and he's doing it. No wonder he's been to 50 countries, living in Mexico, and has a service-based business that's doing very well while he's not there doing the day-to-day stuff. So, man, have you always been an action taker like that, or is that something that is more recent?
I'd say I always did when I was like younger, and part of the reason I wanted to help male youth who were getting into trouble is I've been arrested as a kid growing up. I've been suspended many times from school. I've been kicked out of school. I didn't come, like, it wasn't the easiest childhood growing up, but it was great, and I learned resourcefulness. And I mean, part of me getting into trouble is because I always wanted to do more, whether it was like ringing people's doorbells and running away to get chased, or climbing trees in the woods, or paintballing, in the woods in the city park with my friends. We were always up to stuff. So I would say it was very proactive, and I learned those entrepreneurial skills. But when I was in like grade school, I was labeled with a disability, labeled a troublemaker by the teachers, adults who I was supposed to look up to. So, I mean, I was getting conditioned that I wasn't who I knew I was. But yeah, through my proactiveness and hyper energy. And then when I started traveling at 18, when you go to a new place where nobody knows you and all they get is who's there in the present, you get treated differently than compared to where you grew up and everyone has already labeled you a certain way. So I think going to all those places and having those experiences and being treated as I am versus who people just labeled me as was super helpful. And then, I mean, the Outsource School, it's like, why wouldn't you do that? Like, you can hire someone to do all the work for you, give them a job, and you can do more. Like, of course, I'm going to take the 200, 300 hours, go through the course. go through the mistakes to help our team more, to get everyone ahead, including myself. So if I want to go to a place like Mexico in the winter when it's cold in Canada and do something different, if all works out, then I can. Luckily, like you're calling me on a day when the sun is somewhat shining and things are good. I just had a baby, the business is going well. This is not always the case. There were very tough times as well.
How old's baby?
3.5 weeks old.
Wow, that's really new.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
We've got an old seasoned pro sitting next to me off camera. How old's your baby, Caleb? Oh, 3 months, man. So like you need any advice, you just go to Caleb and he'll give you all the advice.
Yeah. Sounds good.
That's
Yeah,
awesome, man. It's kids just like, it's the best thing. Like I have my 3 daughters, being in Mexico with them, experiencing so many new things, snorkeling, seeing them for the first time, be, 6 inches away from a puffer fish next to their mask and looking at an eel for the first time while snorkeling and seeing, a stingray down below, like experiencing all of these first. It's amazing. Everyone says time goes by so fast and take advantage of it. And it's absolutely true. But I look back at my time with my kids, I'm like, I've been able to enjoy like so many things with them. And so it's gone fast, but I don't look back in regret. I'm like, man, we've been able to do so many cool things. So it'll be fun to see you grow as a dad. It's the best thing. What's been the best thing about being a dad to you? Like, 3.5 weeks in.
I started learning guitar, so I finally have time.
Love it. So you're in this service-based brand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I bet there are not a lot of people running their Shack Shine business the way that you're running it. Is that an accurate statement, or are there more people running it pretty, I would say, semi-absentee like you are?
If there are, I don't know them and they haven't called me. So they're doing a really good job if that's the case.
They're hiding it.
Yeah. But some of the other guys are running a really good business as well. And everyone has different needs. This was just my need at the time. I was getting married and having a kid and just wanted to get away for a bit. So I just figured out how to do it. But
how hard was that decision to make? Because when you make that decision, you need to increase revenue to be able to continue to make the same kind of money that you're going to make, or you're going to have a dip in revenue or profit because of that. Yeah. So walk us through that decision.
For me, like coming from the painting business, and I run a reasonably sized business in the painting business, and it was about the same at the Shack Shine, the size at the time when I had taken it over. And it just, it quickly became uninspiring for me to be the manager within that business at for what compared to now is a smaller level. And it doesn't mean that running a smaller level business is bad at all. Just for me, my experience and what I wanted out of life at that time and now, it didn't line up. So basically the decision was, do I get rid of this business completely, or do I figure out how to better serve the life that I want to live and serve others?
So what's next for you? Like, what do you want to do next in business? Is it expand that? Is it to bring in employees with maybe some profit sharing, or so? Like, what are some of the things that you want to evolve into in the next year to 10 years?
That's $1 million question. Definitely within the franchise in business, I want to grow the Shack Shine that I currently own. Very open to potentially taking on another territory, and if putting the right people in place and growing that would be fun for me. It would give other people an opportunity to run a business and have a lot of control. I'm honestly like, we're thinking about that. The world's changing very quickly these days. That's one of the reasons I joined the Franchise Secret group, was just to get experience from people who've gone further than me and had more success in this business, to see what makes sense for the life I want to live. I want to have a big family with a lot of kids and live on a farm somewhere and keep volunteering with youth. So somehow tie all this in. I don't have an exact playbook right now, so I'm just getting skills like outsource school, learning from you, and growing at the same time.
Then you need to come out. Last year we did a thing out here in South Dakota called the Sodak Shindig. We're not going to do it this year. We'll probably do it next year, the following year. But I do have right over here at least a dozen paintball guns with a bunch of CO2 and a bunch of paintballs that I usually just go right over there into the backwoods and we shoot each other up. Although
Yeah, I'm down.
I got shot up quite a bit by the young college kids that were neighbors of mine. So I went and got the biggest, baddest paintball gun so I could just sit back and just like shoot them up. So I do have an unfair advantage. But when you said paintball
unfair, you
earlier,
earned it.
I earned it. I've earned. I used to play when I was a kid. I used to play when I was, in grade school when he had the PMPs or the PG, whatever they are. But this is the handgun where they just like kind of pop out of there. But I've always loved that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's great.
So are you going to continue the living abroad thing? Like, what advice would you have for somebody that's thinking about taking off sometime? I took off 2 weeks. That's nothing. But what if we were to take off 2 months or 3 months, or maybe live in a different country or a different part of the world for a period of time? What advice would you have for the entrepreneur that is wanting to do something like you've done? Because I've never had anybody talk about this before.
Okay. I mean, I would highly, highly, highly recommend it. If you have a desire to go see the world, and you especially if you haven't and have some new experiences, like that calling is coming to you for a reason. It's not to be ignored. Just like you had a calling probably to run a business, and you honored that calling. If you want to go take an extended vacation, go for a long time or whatever, just start. Okay, I want to go do this, and work your way backwards to what you have to do. The worst case is you leave for a bit, you see what you're missing in your business. I remember I was at this conference once, and it was a funny joke. They're both my friends now, but I said, this guy's business over here, he was like a auto detailer, and he was the only employee, and like he did everything. He's like, that guy doesn't have a business, he has a job. I just sort of chuckled about it with him. But yeah, like if you call yourself a businessman or a businesswoman, leave the actual company for a bit and let it be a business. Otherwise, you got a job. I'm a huge Grant Cardone fan, and he's saying that people like, I want to go to Croatia on a yacht. I was like, most people that I talk to can't get away for a month, and they said, oh, I'm too busy working. I said, are you bragging or complaining? So I think if you want to do it, go like make sure you financially like have a little bit of a barrier. So if you make a mistake, you can go back and consider that an investment. Don't consider that you're losing money. Just put that little financial barrier. Go on your vacation, set everyone up properly as much as you can first. Feel free to reach out to me if you want insight from my experience doing it. But then go away. If there's problems, it's going to address the weak points in your business. Write them down. Go back into your business, fix them, try it again. You'll make more mistakes. Come back, do it again. Do that probably two to 7 times, or for me, probably 10 to try to figure it out. And then then you have a business. And then when you go home, if you go back home, you have a proper business, and you can either expand that business, make it better for other people, give people more responsibility and leadership, and help your business and the community.
So what you just said there was really good. And I just wrote a little note to myself that says, we need to do a little session in the mastermind called Living Abroad as a Business Owner. I think I would love to have like just discussion with the other Franchise Tribe Mastermind members, asking you questions around that, because I think what will happen is a lot of us will realize we think we have a business, but we really have more of a job. And I'm in this too. Like there were things that I was doing before that I didn't need to be doing. And even though I had a great lifestyle, I still have a great lifestyle, but 2 months ago I had a great lifestyle. I wasn't working a ton, and doing what I wanted to do, working on things that I enjoyed, but I wasn't as free as I thought I was. And I really worked on it the 2 weeks that I was gone to understand the things that I really didn't need to be doing. And maybe somebody can do a better job at it than myself. And even today, like I was on the phone with somebody today, just before we got on this podcast, and I am looking at becoming an equity partner with them. And one of the other partners is a very well-known very well-known person, and it'd be a very fun thing to do. But I know I don't overpromise on what I can deliver. There's certain things that I can do and certain things that I just can't do or won't do or don't want to do. And so just being honest with yourself through the things that you are doing in the business. And Cameron's does a really good job at this. And we're going to have Cameron Harold come in and talk to the mastermind again. But he does a really good job of kind of systematically taking you through the things that are really important that you need to be doing yourself as a business owner, and things that you don't. So, first of all, will you do that? Will you come into the mastermind and do a session with us?
For sure.
So, another mastermind member just typed in a question. He said, I love the advice, being gone and then seeing where the holes are. I often work from home and just force employees to be self-sufficient. And that is a great, Kevin, that's awesome. And you, but you said you do that and you force yourself to do it. Once you are gone in a different environment, it's even like, it really forces you to do it to a whole nother level, because I did the same thing and I work from home and I'm like, oh, Caleb can do this. And then I find myself doing so many things, but that's step one. Just do like what Kevin said, force your employees to be self-sufficient and know that things will break, right? I mean, I'm sure you delegated and had people do stuff and not everything was done amazingly. I know Caleb certainly didn't do everything amazing the first or second time. Again, he's right in front of me, or else I would have never said that. But you just have to be okay with things not being done as good, or just some things breaking here and there, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, even if you own a franchise, right, you're trusting half your business to be run by someone you don't even know. And they're hiring, like, the franchisor is hiring employees, they're running the call center, they're hiring the coaches to coach you. You're already putting 100% faith in someone else. You're just doing it again within the part that you control. So it's nothing new. It's the way you think about it. I know I love watching Shark Tank, and Mark Cuban has this thing where he says, do you want a whole grape or half a watermelon? So it's sort of the same concept. It's, you can personally overwatch everything, but your managers or leaders, ideally, probably don't. Like, if you had a boss, do you want that boss breathing down your neck and like telling you everything to do and checking everything you do, or just, here, go do it, check in a week. Any mistakes that you made, just don't do anything crazy. As long as it's good intention, we'll just figure it out. There's a budget for that in there. And the more you do, the better results we'll all get.
So this is coming out of left field. Is that a rooster crowing in the background? Or is that a kid screaming?
I thought these are noise canceling headphones.
Oh, they're noise canceling, but man, I'm a chicken farmer. Actually, I have daughters that are chicken farmers. So I recognize roosters, even in Mexico. And we were driving through Mexico and the girls were just like, there's a chicken. They loved the chickens, the horses, and the cows alongside of the road, but it made them realize how great of a life our chickens have.
Yeah. I think the chicken next door has a pretty good life. I don't think he has much. He has like a nice tree, and I think it's just him. He sometimes jumps. I work out here in the morning. Sometimes he jumps up on the wall first in the morning to watch me work out in boosters. But yeah, dude, I don't need an alarm clock.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, I appreciate you coming on, doing this live in the Franchise Secrets Facebook group. And just, enjoy what you bring to the mastermind already, being newer to it, and looking forward to getting to know you more over the months ahead. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, Eric. It was a pleasure. We'll see you at the next mastermind.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.